like you think Shakur, how does Shakur defense measure? Just his defense, not to get off on Shakur, but just defensively.
I think Shakur's defense may be better than Inouye's because he has to be.
Yes.
Because Shakur don't have the punching power that Inoue has.
Right.
He has to use other skills to help get him through the fight.
Right. That's good, man.
Inouye's punching power is such that he'll take a punch from you to deliver his shot. So his defensive skills, you might look at it and you don't see it as being as great maybe as Shakur, but he don't have to be.
Right.
Because people don't, it's not going to stand toe to toe with him. They're going to try to move away from him. So you know how they say the best defense is an offense?
Right.
And that's what Inoue has. He has such a tremendous offense that fighters are trying to get away from him more so than him backing up trying to get away from other fighters.
That remind me of somebody. I'm not even gonna say it. I'm not gonna make it about him, but man, I got homework to do, and I'm a fan on the monster. I just want to ask one last thing. Back in the day, heavyweights, you know what I'm saying? Because you know that 3-minute fight, you haven't seen it yet, but heavyweights, man. Like, what heavyweight? Just tell me a glimpse of a heavyweight. You know what I'm saying? If somebody wanted to go back, you know, and really like a hidden gem, like an Inoue, of time go by and people never really get privy to them. What would be a heavyweight? You know what I'm saying? That kind of, you know, used to really like impress you.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, during that heavyweight era when you had Joe Frazier, you had Ali, you had Norton, you had all of those guys. That was an era in the heavyweight division that to me was special, because you just didn't have to see one person fight this person. You could take Larry Holmes, let him fight Ken Norton. That's going to be a good fight. You could have Ali fight Frazier. That's going to be a good fight. You could have Foreman fight anybody. You had about 10 guys in that heavyweight division that all were good fighters, and it was one of the best periods of the heavyweight division. It was just so many good matches to be made. Even Ron Lau was in there. I mean, it was just a good period where the heavyweight division was the cream of the crop of boxing. You don't see that anymore right now. You don't see that many top heavyweights like you did back during that time. So it was several good top heavyweights back in the 70s and 80s.
So you saying the quality? So you've laid eyeballs on several different eras. So okay, that era. Okay, so I'm gonna do some homework on that era, especially Ron Lau, since you brought that name up. That's homework for me, Ron Lau. But let's come up a little bit. To when it was Tyson and Holyfield and Lennox Lewis and all them guys. I want to ask, cause what was your opinion on Lennox? What was your opinion on Lennox?
Lennox Lewis was a good boxer, okay? And rightly so, he was going to be a champion. He definitely was going to be a champion. But the fighter back during that era that truly impressed me the most, I would have to say Evander Holyfield. Because Evander Holyfield did something that very few fighters could do. He came up from the light heavyweight division and moved up to the heavyweight division, and he became a champion. That was something that was very difficult to do. Very difficult. And his competitive nature, he fought better once he got hurt. When you hurt him and you think you got him, he just fought back. You know, he just had the tenacity of a pit bull. He wasn't gonna stop. I was so impressed with the way he fought. It was only one guy that just put a beating on Holyfield, but it was because Holyfield had so many wars that eventually you're gonna age in a certain fight.
Who was that?
And that's when he fought the dude who man, I got his name right here. He fought
Riddick?
No. He fought Roy Jones as a middleweight, but he moved up. He moved up in weight. Oh man, he bald head guy.
Tony. I'm sorry, man.
I don't know how I had a brain
fart, man. I was like lights out, like man. My light boy. I'm saying names. I'm like, what the hell you talk about? Yeah.
I don't know how I didn't come right off the bat and say James Toney.
Man, I was in La La Land. Trust me, cause I'm like, man. When it dawned on me, I felt foolish, man. Yeah. You right.
James Toney beat Evander Holyfield, okay? He handily stopped Holyfield, but Holyfield had been through so many wars that this was another war that he just suffered from battle fatigue, and he could not beat James Toney. He just could not beat James Toney. But Holyfield was a good champion. He came up from the light heavyweight division. He moved up. He was a good champion, as far as I'm concerned. The apex of his career is when he finally stopped Mike Tyson. He stopped him twice. You know. So that just showed that Holyfield, he was something to deal with, and Mike Tyson just could not beat Holyfield. He couldn't beat him.
Dude, that's why they say the real deal Holyfield. Let me ask you this though, because this is something that like coming from me, man, it's always kind of taken out of context, right? But tell me, just give me a snapshot. Let's go back in time during that era, both of them eras. Was there ever such an emphasis on the size difference of heavyweights? Because I hear people when they say, "Oh man, well he was only this small and such was this big." Like I've never heard, like in all my years of watching boxing, I'm 80, like 80 baby. You know what I'm saying? I've never heard, but were the champions ever talking like do you remember the heavyweights really making a big deal about if you a heavyweight fighting another heavyweight that might be on the other end as you? Like, was that a thing back then?
Listen, back in the day, the average heavyweight would come in around 215. Okay? If you got around 220, you were a big heavyweight, okay? And nowadays, the heavyweight division, you see guys much bigger. But back in the day, heavyweights didn't weigh that much. For example, Muhammad Ali during his prime, during the era of Cassius Clay, he only weighed about 210. Guys in that heavyweight division wasn't coming in with the weight that you see now. They just weren't that big.
Yeah, I mean, I think a part of it was, I mean, was it a thing where, and correct me if I'm wrong, but was it a thing where back then, like, did the heavyweights kind of, with the exception of a few, but did the heavyweights kind of take how they look, like that, like being a specimen, did they take that a little bit more serious than the heavyweights now? Because it seemed like now it's just like people are, they just big. It's like you just big. But I thought maybe back then it was more to be like you wanted to kind of look, you kind of wanted to look so you was actually like fit, like you were really fit, like back, like, or was it just me?
No, you are absolutely right. Heavyweights back in the day, if you was over 220, you were considered to be big and maybe not in the best shape. But nowadays, man, you can see heavyweights 240, whatever, and they may not have a muscular tone. Heavyweights back in the day, they prided themselves in being lean and fit and have that appearance of being in shape.
Yeah.
But you don't always see that nowadays. And see, back during the time when Muhammad Ali, you know, let's say Cassius Clay, because when you think about him, he had pretty much 2 boxing careers. He had his early career prior to him being stripped of his title and had to stay away for 3 years. And then you had the second part of his career, okay? It's no doubt he was better during the first part of his career. And he would come into a fight maybe 210. If you look at old fights of Ali when he was Cassius Clay, and you just look, he looks small compared to what heavyweights look like today.
Yeah.
But that's the way the heavyweight division was back then. You didn't have these guys 240 pounds and all like that. They just didn't come, you know, they did not average that kind of weight like you see guys today.
Yeah. I thought so, man. I was like, man, because I recall sometimes they would say, man, you know, Mike Tyson was short, and they would say the same thing about Holyfield, but I never heard of a big deal that did that at the diversity of, you know, you're gonna have to fight somebody that's taller or longer, or you're gonna have to fight. You might fight somebody that's taller and longer, but like the brawl, and somebody that's shorter and stocky and like the box, but you know, it's the heavyweight division where they all, you know, with the right, like Foreman, he was a nightmare. But yeah, I thought it was more of like, he was big, but shit, he was like, he looked like he was solid still, but they to me it looked like they took more pride in how they looked, and you know, and they weren't just big for no reason, just big and just had on a pair of gloves, you know.
See, Foreman was a different monster. Foreman, by all means, was considered a big heavyweight. You know what I mean? Back during his day, Foreman probably was one of the bigger heavyweights during his era. You know, he was just a big heavyweight. And he just hit so hard that people couldn't take his punch. You know, Joe Frazier, he knocked Joe Frazier out 2 times. You know, he knocked Ken Norton out. People could not stand up to the punching power of George Foreman. And out of all the wins that Muhammad Ali ever had in his career, in my viewpoint, the greatest victory he ever pulled off was the fight with George Foreman. Because unlike his earlier fights when he had difficult competitors, he was young. He had youth on his side. So therefore, youth, stamina, and his movement, it incorporated a lot for him, and it benefited him. When he beat George Foreman, he was an older fighter. He did not have the movement to sustain for 15 rounds, and he literally had to slow down in the ring and adopted this rope-a-dope philosophy, something that nobody even, his corner even told him, what are you doing? Get off the ropes, he's gonna kill you.